Welcome back to another episode of the Lucky Girl Social Podcast. Today, I am so excited to introduce you to Cris Gordon, who I had the pleasure of meeting about a year ago. And I have just been so incredibly impressed by everything that you've been doing in the last year. She is a successful agency owner of CB Communications. She is a female investor. She has her own personal brand, Cris Gordon, and she's a mom of four, and you make it look easy. So
you.
I am so excited. Today, we're going to talk all about storytelling, the power of story, as well. I'm going to ask Cris a lot of questions about investing in female companies because I personally am so interested in that. So thank you so much for joining me.
Thank you. I'm so happy to be here. And honestly, I'm so excited just to catch up. It's so funny when we met, I was pregnant with my fourth and now he's 8 months old.
Wow.
So it's just like time flies, but it's always good to be able to like catch up. I follow you and I follow everything that you do. So seeing you and being able to just jump on here today and chat all things, I'm an open book. So I'm here to tell all about agency life, mom life, investing, everything.
Oh my gosh, I think it's just going to be so valuable because being a mom and being a business owner is an experience that I have at this point, but I think it's so incredible the fact that you have, 4 kids and you're able to run multiple businesses and be an investor and travel and be part of cool mentorships and programs and events. Like, it's just so incredible. And I think, obviously you can't do it all, but you pick and choose, and you seem like you do such a great job across the board with everything that you do.
Thank you. And I think it's really about intentionality, right? If you're going to be someplace, you have to be all in, and there is no kind of like wobbling back and forth. Like, oh, should I do it? It's like once I pick to go somewhere, to travel, to go on a business trip, to be a part of a mastermind, I go all in, and it allows me to kind of alleviate some of that like guilt and second guessing on where should I be somewhere else? Because if your mind is somewhere else, you're also not being able to maximize the opportunity there. And then it just makes you feel worse, right? Totally. So I think the biggest thing that I've been able to master all these years is just being able to stay present. And that, doesn't come easy. It's like a support system and preparation and all of the things that happen behind the scenes that people don't really talk about, or that you might not always see on Instagram. But I try to be pretty honest on IG about all the things that I have to do to prepare to leave the kids for a couple of days, or sometimes they come with me and I have my au pair come. So it's like I've built this kind of infrastructure to be able to be successful in all areas of my life. And it doesn't mean that you're successful all the time in every area at the same time, right? So that's the other thing that I'm always honest about. But it's about kind of pinpointing the things that you are going all in on in that moment and making sure that you're giving it 100%.
I could not agree more. And I think it's important too. Like you have support, like you say, and I know when you gave birth to your last baby, like people were dropping off meals for you. It was so beautiful to see like a community like rise up to support you. And like, I think sometimes women don't want to feel like they don't allow themselves to be supported.
Oh, and I think something, especially when I was a little bit younger, that I had a hard time accepting that help. And I think with time and with so many kids, eventually I had to accept the help. But I also realized that help doesn't mean that you're weak.
Totally.
And as women, I think we often kind of correlate it with weakness, which is silly. And that maybe that's a societal construct. But at the end of the day, we are stronger when we can explain the things that we need help on, or where we need to bring our village in. And I have become a better mom because of the support around me, right? And a more present mom because of the support around me. And I think so many times people feel like, as they're thinking about, can I be a mom? Can I own a business? Can I kind of do it all? Well, you can, but you also have to be willing to be honest with yourself about what you can't do or what you won't do, so that you can be your highest and best in the things that are the most important to you, right? And so like, if I wasn't honest about the fact that I have an au pair, I have a cleaning lady that comes every week, like there are things that I've done to build my lifestyle in order to support my business, my clients, and my kids, and my husband, and my family, right? So it's not like I'm just like doing all the things and running around. It's like I come home and I'm like cooking dinner, and Yes, sometimes I am, but the things that go on behind the scenes so that I can do that is like, yeah, I also get like Whole Foods delivered.
Yeah.
And I have a nutritionist that I work with that like helps me plan those meals that I cook, right? So I think if we can all be more honest and open about the measures that we take in order to also achieve success in our career life or in our, founder-led life or agency life, then we can all rise together.
Totally. And I feel like there's such a correlation between that and business growth, right? Being able to ask for help, being able to delegate. And I think a lot of times we see that as weakness as well. I can't do all the things. Like, no, you can't do all the things and serve your clients to the best of your ability. And if you want to continue scaling and you want to create the impact that you want to create, you have to be okay with hiring. And so I know you have a team behind
Yes,
you.
I do. The best team ever. And it's true. I think people wear being busy as a badge of honor. And it's not to say that there aren't going to be times that even when you delegate and even when you have team that you won't be busy.
Totally.
Of course, there's going to be the grind, right? There's going to be the moments where it's like, this is it. Put your head down, get through it. It's going to be a busy season. But ultimately, reframing that sense of busy, because I always tell people, especially agency owners, I'm like, is that a revenue generating task that you're doing? If it's not, well, then you're cutting down your hourly fee to like $5 an hour because you continue to work all day on things that aren't revenue generating. And therefore, you're not utilizing your time to make $575 an hour. You're utilizing it to make because you're just spreading out all these tasks over the course of the day instead of delegating it or hiring someone at a lower hourly rate than your own and really being able to build and scale. And so there's just so many little things that we can do as agency owners that allow us to free up some of the things so that we can just do our highest and best, right? There's kind of like the delegate list, the don't do at all, and the do list. And being able to identify those are going to be paramount. Yeah, they're going to be paramount in your growth. And my team is a big part of that. I recognized from the beginning that I wanted a team by my side, and my team is constructed of permalancers, full-time. I have a full-time assistant, all the things that kind of make CB run. And it allows me to be really present and show up as a leader for the team and be able to kind of like lead in my own way and show up with my clients and give them client love and be there for them and check in on how everything's running. It doesn't mean that I'm doing all the day to day, right? I have a fantastic and really talented team that keeps the wheels turning, but I'm able to, again, do my highest and best.
Yeah, I love it. I totally agree. And I think, I always talk when it comes to hiring about leveraging money. How can you utilize $1 to turn it into $4? And if you have a set rate as an entrepreneur, like you said, at $555 an hour, but you're doing a $5 task and you could delegate it to doing somebody who can do it for $15 or $20, that's leveraging money because you can start focusing on those revenue generating tasks, which is so incredibly important. And I think for us, when it comes to hiring, I'm always building out scorecards as well, which is how am I turning this $1 into $4? So our team has very clear KPIs. I know exactly how much revenue they're managing in the business, which is really helpful as well, because I think sometimes when people hire, it's just like a bottomless pit and they don't see any return.
Yeah. And they don't have a game plan.
Yeah.
And I think that at the end of the day, when you hire, you have to remember that, to your point, yes, your money has to work for you, but also there's a level of like motivation and overseeing that you're going to need to have as a business owner. And that doesn't mean jumping in and doing it for them.
Yeah.
Right. You have to allow your employees to do things, but you have to be very, very clear about what it is that you want them to do, or else your money won't work for you. Yeah. You'll end up feeling like you've wasted time, you've wasted money, you've wasted resources. And that just kind of harbors your own resentment either towards them or towards the business. And that's also not a good place to get into. So it's like you have to identify what you need, hire, but you can also fire fast, right? Yeah. If things aren't working out, you can fire fast. And be super crystal clear on what it is that's actually going to get your business to be revenue generating.
And the next level. Absolutely. I love that. And I love the fire fast. We talk a lot about hiring because it took me so many years to figure out how to hire the right team and the right support behind me. And previous, when I was not sure if I wanted to keep somebody on my team, I think I take a ton of responsibility, which you should as a founder. It's not anything that, I feel bad about, but previous, I hadn't set people up for success. So it allowed me to take on all the responsibility and really have blurred lines around like, is it me or is it them? Now we have such a crystal clear hiring process that, you know, in the last couple of months, we've had to let go of multiple people, but I know that I've done everything as a leader to lead them to success. And ultimately it's not the right fit. But previous, it might have taken me 6 months, you know, 8 months to make that decision, which is costing you money and client happiness, satisfaction at the end of the day.
Emotional distress. Like, let's be honest here. I think that's the other piece of it that we often don't realize actually also costs us more money is when the founder, the person at the helm, is feeling emotional distress. And a lot of times this isn't really an issue for men. Of course, I think that women kind of have that extra layer of compassion. So we end up beating ourselves up. And when we don't have systems in place and we don't have these processes that we can look back and remind ourselves like we did do everything, we end up going into this like turmoil mentality of like, oh my gosh, why isn't this working? Was I a good enough leader? Did they not like me? I mean, it's the reality, and it's okay to sometimes have a little moment of like second guessing yourself as a leader. But ultimately, when you have these things that you're confident in, that you've built, the infrastructure that you've built, that you know that you can lean on, then you don't go down that rabbit hole and start to kind of like spin out, because that could be literally months of spin out. And that's dollars out of your pocket that you could have been reallocating to continue to grow your agency. And so it's not to say that like fire fast and be irrational. I think that it has to be, you know, you have to think along the lines of, okay, did I do everything? Did I kind of check off all those boxes with the supports that we've offered them? How was my onboarding? How can I always grow as a leader with every person that potentially isn't the right fit, and with every person that's a great fit? What are the key learnings? So kind of having that own, like your postmortem with yourself of how can I continue to excel and get better? And maybe like sometimes it just wasn't the right fit, and how to be able to like recognize that and just move on. You know, and move on amicably and in a way that is respectful. I think being a good leader means having a level of compassion that you'll always understand that when you bring someone in, it's a big responsibility. But at the end of the day, with the right mentality, everyone wins. And if the person isn't the right for the job, then you're not doing them any favors either by keeping them.
By not having those hard conversations with team members when they're not operating at the level you expect. It's like not giving them the opportunity to grow in the areas that they need to. So I think a lot of times women, especially, they're like, oh, I don't want to be the bitchy boss. Like, I want to be like the nice boss. And like, then you become a doormat, first of all, which isn't a good feeling. And second, you're not giving your team the opportunity to grow, which is my number one on my team. I'm like, okay, where do you want to grow this year? How can I support you? And making sure that we're having those clear conversations.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think at the end of the day, like, being able to grow their dreams is something that allows them to feel invested in the environment that you're building. And I always say this, there's so many founders that come to me and they're like, Cris, I really want to hire and I'm not sure when's the right time. And so they end up putting it off and they're like, I don't know. I don't have the money. Now, I hired my first person before I even had the money. I was just like, let's go. I'm going to make sure that I make this work. And I remind them that like, if this is really meant for you and you really want to grow your business in a big way and you've put together some starting point of an infrastructure, that hiring that person will also light a fire on your ass, right? Like you'll have that deeper responsibility. You'll feel a little bit more legitimate too, right? When someone's kind of like relying on you for their income. And it's also some of the greatest honor, right? Like you're able to like put food on plates in other homes outside of your own. And so there's a different layer of, I think, emotional investment, and also like a different layer of like clout for yourself as a business owner that you're able to get when you make that hire. And I'm willing to bet that with the right systems and the right team, you're going to grow. You are. And so I always say like, take the leap, right? And it's okay that like not everything is figured out. You're a founder. You're going to figure it out. Like we build the parachute in the air after we jump, right?
Even when we think we've have it figured out.
We think we had the parachute already. And then all of a sudden we're like, okay, that parachute didn't work. We have to figure out another one. It's like, but we never just free fall. It's like there is a level of grit that anyone who has decided to start their own business naturally has. So you have to also be confident in that.
I love that. I always reference my burn my boats moment, which was when I quit my job without a backup plan. And I was like, okay, I have credit card debt. Like, I got to figure it out. That was my burn the boats moment. But yours was hiring a team member first. And you were like, okay, I have to be successful. There's no other option because now somebody else is relying on me to put food on their table. And I thank God every day for my burn the boat moment because ultimately, maybe I would have sat in a 9 to 5 where I was unfulfilled for another couple of years if I hadn't just quit. So
It's
I
true.
love that.
And to have that like level of motivation, I hired that person. I was still working out of my house and I had a brand new home, a mortgage. I didn't have any kids yet, but I had that new kind of like house responsibility. So it was scary. And I think so many people, they end up kind of utilizing these things as excuses. And they're like, well, I have a mortgage or I have kids and let me just tell you, those things are not excuses. They're motivators, right? They're not going to allow you to fail because you're going to have like your back's against the wall and you need to succeed. So you have this driver. If it was easy, everyone would do it. If it was easy, maybe you wouldn't have the motivation that you need to really break the mold. And I think that's the other part of the entire outlook on agency life or owning a business in general is there is never going to be one easy path that you just take and you're like, cool.
Totally. Or the perfect moment.
No. And I think we sometimes feel like we see that because of social media and this or that, but that's just not the reality. It's going to be hard and you're going to have to sacrifice things along the way. And eventually that sacrifice becomes less and less and it turns more into compromise. But in the early days, it is sacrifice and it's kind of taking the leap before you know what the outcome is going to be.
Yeah, I love it. So how many years ago did you launch your CV Comms?
All right. So CV Comms, 8 years old.
Wow.
Yes. So 8 years ago.
Same. Is that 2017?
Yes. 2017. Yeah. 2017. I was so excited. I was in-house at a beauty brand. I worked at agencies before and I always felt like I can change this. Like this, how agencies run felt really archaic to me. The client felt like they were kind of this distant part of the equation. And I'm like, that's weird. They should be the part of the equation. And honestly, like the teams were overlooked, overworked, exhausted, lacking creativity, burnt out. And I'm like, this is just not the way that it should be. There has to be a better way. And so when I kind of entered the workforce, even out of college, I wanted to be, PR gal and, I wanted to plan events and do all the things and tell stories. And I always loved to talk. But I didn't understand what the construct of the industry would really look like until I started working. And once I did, it was like, wow, these are long hours and not feeling like you're appreciated at all. And even though the industry is not going to change as a whole, little tweaks as a company and as a boss and as a leader and as CEOs can make a huge difference in culture. And so I kind of like set my mind on what's that going to look like. And then I went in-house at a beauty brand for years, started their PR department and grew there. And they came on as my first client when I started CB. Yeah. Yeah. And so that was fantastic because it really kind of proved to me that I was able to do the damn thing, right? Like the thing that I wanted to do for so long, that idea that I had in my head of like, I can recreate the way an agency works. I can recreate the experience because if you recreate the experience for the employees, you're inevitably going to recreate the experience for the clients because they're going to have happy employees working on them, coming to work excited, creative, thinking outside the box. They're going to be true representatives of your brand. And as publicists, that's what we are. We are literally an extension of the brand. So if you have team members that love the product that they're representing, what are they going to do? They're going to go out at a party and talk about it, or they're going to be with friends and family and they're going to pull out their lip gloss, right? And so it was really, for me, the biggest mission was how do we recreate this experience from the inside out so that everybody wins?
I love that so much. And people ask me, or they're like, oh, does Lucy have an MLM? Because my team promotes the brand so much because they're so invested. And I'm like, no, but like they just like what they do and they feel valued. And like sometimes like you guys can have the day off and they're like, no, like we want to work. And I'm like, what's wrong with you? Don't have the day off. But I love that idea. I've never heard it like articulated in that way, recreating the experience from the inside out.
Yeah, it's so important. And it's essentially what you're doing with your team, right? Like You are leading with compassion, and there's a certain level of emotional intelligence that you have to be able to turn on while not being highly emotional. That's the difference. It's a really big difference that we have to learn to navigate. And listen, we're not perfect in the beginning. I think those emotions run very high in the early days because you feel like everything's kind of on the line. But as you start to create that like balance, you can understand how to like turn up that emotional intelligence to listen to your team, to hear them. And that will automatically result in your clients feeling heard and feeling loved and appreciated, you know? And it's a hard thing to scale. I'm not going to lie, right? To not overwork your team and throw a million accounts on them and, you know, keep kind of adding clients to the balance. But I've always been really determined to grow that. And my biggest mission remains that I want to create an agency experience as a leader that is bar none, right? Then, and if no one's ever done it yet, well, then it's going to be a challenge, but I'm up for the challenge.
I absolutely love that. How did your love of storytelling like create? I feel like it's such a differentiator for you as a brand. Every time I look at what you're doing, I think it's so incredible. And I love storytelling. I love the Building a Story brand by Donald Miller, Start With Why by Simon Sinek. I think they're incredible books. And I think it's really important because when you can tell a super powerful story, we retain that information so much more. I think Donald Miller says it's like 22 times more when you're telling a story you remember than a fact. So I think it's such a cool differentiator. So I'd love to hear kind of like, where did that originate for you?
I mean, honestly, from when I was a kid, my dad always he was the most animated storyteller. And like my friends, my family, everybody kind of knew that about him. And I think I just grew up. He's Dominican. He's from Dominican Republic. And so I'm a first generation Dominican, and he immigrated here with his family. And like, I think he just wanted to show up in a different way and be remembered in a different way. And so like, and he's over the top, and I'm Dominican and Italian. So it's like, you know, we have the over the top personality and very loud and take up space. But I didn't want to just take up space without having something to say, right? I always wanted people to remember who I was as a human being, as a friend, as a sister, now as a wife, as a leader. And so to me, that core is storytelling, because if you can make someone laugh or feel comforted or feel like they're not alone, that's the real superpower. And ultimately, if that's tied to something that you are then selling, right, then they're going to feel fully bought in. And so that storytelling kind of developed. And I even see my kids, like my own kids, which I get very proud of them. They're talkers and they will tell stories. And I really encourage them to tell stories, even if it's about like their Paw Patrol toys and this kind of like fake world that they've built. It's like, it pulls me in, it pulls the people around them in, it makes them memorable. And we have such a small window to make a first impression that when you're able to lead with a story, talk about something that resonated with you or made you who you are, then that's going to be what people think of when you are not in the room. And so, you know, crafting a compelling story, being consistent about who you are, all of these pieces, it's something that I teach every day, right? We have a fantastic program called Executive Brand Presence, and it's something that personally I'm so passionate about. It has changed so many people's lives and the way that they have been able to create revenue for their brand, grow their business, fundraise, pitch. All of it comes from understanding their story. And so that's why there's so many books about it. That's why there is such proven credentials around storytelling, because if you're just throwing out a bunch of facts or a bunch of things, or, you know, maybe it's a bunch of like, oh, this program has X, Y, and Z, people might be like, okay, cool, move on. But if you're telling a story about how it's changed you, or the transformation that you had, or the point in your life where you really turned a corner because of this thing, well, now that listener is fully bought in. And they might not even know what you did, but they want it, right? And so they're like, I don't know what you're saying, but you want it. And I get that so much. And it's like the biggest compliment ever. I don't know what Cris is, what even is it, but I just want it.
I love that.
And I'm like, well, come on in, you know? And it's like, that's the fun part, because they get to uncover what the depth of all the programs and the things that you know, and I know are actually very impressive about our business, but they get to uncover that as the second part to the larger thing that drew them in. And I think that the larger thing that draws them in is where the fun is and where the magic is, right? Because that's going to make them feel so bought in to the program, to the experience, and to the result. Because they're going to be like, I don't know what it is, but I want to be like that. And so that's why, I mean, storytelling is everything. And everyone loves a good story.
Who doesn't?
Yeah.
I feel like it's like the first thing that is able to transport us to another dimension. And now I'm obsessed with like romanticities at this point in my life, but I do it rather than watching TV. I'm like, it's such a good like stress reliever for me. It transports me. And so stories are so incredibly powerful.
Yeah.
What would you say are like the ingredients, if you had to, of a powerful story?
Okay. So there are some general takeaways that I always like to give people. I think, you know, I was an English major. So like stories, I read like a million books throughout college, and it was a passion of mine for sure. And I didn't know, was I going to be a writer? And then I'm like, oh no, I'm just going to talk for a living. But the biggest things to consider are we're making sure that there's consistency, right? There needs to be something consistent in every single room. If you show up in one room differently than you show up in another room, well, then people aren't really going to remember you. So there has to be some consistent storytelling. You need clarity, right? It needs to be super clear who you are. No one ever questions who I am. I'm like, I'm a mom. I own a business. I wrote a book. Like all of this is under that bubble of who Cris is and how she shows up. I'm not all of a sudden going to walk into my agency and be a completely different person. And it's like, oh, wow, that's kind of weird, right? So there needs to be consistency. And then you need to be concise enough that people continue to listen.
Yeah.
Right. And then, of course, credibility. So I would say like the 4 C's. I always say I'm the 5th C because then you come work with Cris and we wrap it all up in a nice little bow. But having that credibility, maybe you're talking about a specific instance where it changed your life, or you can use then that fact to back up your story, like how you just brought up Donald Miller and, you know, the percentage of what he says is, you know, retaining memory. Those are the pieces of the puzzle that bring a good story all together. And so it's important to think about your story like physically, like ingredients. I always say you have tomatoes, you have flour, and you have spices, and you have cheese. In one room, you might make a pizza. In another room, maybe you're making tomato soup and grilled cheese, right? In another room, maybe it's focaccia, or maybe it's pasta and sauce with a little cheese on top and some Italian spices. But the ingredients have remained the same. Even though the audience likes different things, they're never going to be confused. If someone was in a different room and saw you twice or 3 times, they're not going to be like, wow, they're showing up totally different. I don't even really remember what they're about. If you give the consumer or the viewer or the audience an opportunity to be confused, they will be.
Yeah.
And that will work against you.
It creates lack of authenticity, right?
Oh,
They're
totally.
like, that's not the same.
Yeah.
That was such a good analogy. The pasta, the focaccia, the pizza, because it's so true.
Yeah, it is.
And it's memorable. Oh, loved that. That was so good. Okay, so we only have a couple minutes left, and I would be remiss not to ask you what can you share with us about investing in other brands? I'm so interested in this. I'm literally going to call you after just to talk about
Please,
it.
anytime. And you can ask me anything. I mean, I've done a lot of research and understanding like what's going to work, and you have to figure out what you want your portfolio to be. So I'm an angel investor, and I've also done sweat equity deals, which is also really interesting for people that own agencies. It might be something to consider, whether you're a graphic designer, whether you're a website developer, whether you're a PR agency, a social media agency, the opportunity to also work for sweat equity, it's really, really valuable because that also means you can get into investing without having to put cash up front. But I've also put cash up front. And so it's a risk. Let's call it what it is, right? But it's a calculated risk. And you're really at that point, especially in angel investing, you're betting on the person, the founder, and kind of how far you think that they can take it, right? Of course, they're going to give you some, background on market evaluation and all of that. But at the end of the day, you're really asking yourself, like, number one, is this something that I'm passionate about? As a member of their maybe, angel investment cohort, or if you become a member of their board, can I add enough value to make this successful as well? What can I give to them? Because angels usually come in and they don't just give a check. They give some type of expertise, connections. They'll help with, so for me, like maybe I'll give them some guidance on PR, or maybe we'll build out some messaging for them. And so it's kind of 2-part. So ask yourself, are you really able to add value here? Is it something that you believe in? is the founder someone that you believe in, which all comes back to the storytelling, right? A successful founder who's often raised millions of dollars has nailed their message and nailed their story. And that's why when you work with me, I always say the difference between $0 and $1 million is your story and how you tell it. And I am very adamant about that, because you can walk in to the right group and say the wrong thing and walk out with zero, right? And I know that so many investors at that stage, when they're not big VCs or putting huge checks in, they're looking for the founder. They're really trying to understand and evaluate. Do they have the grit? Do they have what it takes to even course correct if things don't go perfectly? Right? It's usually you're not investing at the stage of the business where everything is super crystal clear.
Yeah.
You're coming in at an earlier stage. So investing is really fun. And I think like people have this misconception that you have to write big checks. I mean, you can write checks anywhere from $5,000 to $500,000, right? $20,000. I mean, my largest checks were maybe 20, 25. And I like to invest a lot in beauty as a portfolio. I'm a beauty gal through and through. That's how I started my career in beauty PR. And so beauty, I've invested in some technology, especially things around like family, anything that will help make my life as a mom easier. I often find as a really good, item to add to my portfolio. But it should be fun. And listen, if you are super, super attached to those dollars, then you have to either not do it or form some type of like maybe account that you know that any money is going to be like what you can consider like fun money. This is the money that I'm going to reinvest. And this is the money that I'm going to invest in certain founders. I'm going to be a part of their mission. I'm going to help them build their dreams. And I think there's something really powerful about that.
Totally.
And so you have to kind of allow yourself to dissociate from the actual dollars, because it's not money that you get back right away and maybe never. And that's just the reality of it, right? If you get a unicorn, great, fantastic. But if you don't, have you been able to make an impact and help along the way? That's what I would ask myself.
I love that. How are you finding these opportunities?
So there's a lot of different things called syndicates and groups. And so I have a few different friends in the industry that have led syndicates. Syndicates is basically like a cohort of angels where they'll say, there's $500,000 open and you can buy in. And maybe the minimum check size is $10,000. And they kind of gather all these amazing women together. I like to invest in female-led businesses. And so I very specifically go towards like a Dream Ventures. And I have a friend, Kara, who owns Kaz Consulting, and she has syndicates as well. But they essentially like will bring you together for kind of like a meet and greet with the founder. And it'll be like a casual breakfast, or they'll do some type of like event or some type of dinner. And because I've kind of gotten into it over the years of like helping founders tell their story at this stage, I was kind of like welcomed in to also explore investing. And so that's how it ultimately happened. But for anyone that's looking to invest, I mean, there's a few ways. Start looking at the companies that you really love that are founder led, that have either been open about looking for investors, or perhaps they've shared with their, kind of small knit groups or on LinkedIn that that's the next stage of business, and just ask, shoot your shot, right? And see how you can get involved and see how you can ask for help. Also, for agency owners that have clients that are building their business and you're seeing it happen and you're maybe at the impetus of that, talk to them about sweat equity, right? Especially in exchange for a certain portion of your fee. You never have to give all your fee up front and just have that equal all the sweat equity. You can do half and half. You have your typical retainer fee or your typical onboarding fee, and you say, okay, great, I will cut that in half, and it vests over a certain amount of time. And sidecar, and there's so many tools and things that make it super easy for that to happen nowadays, that contracts, negotiations are all run through platforms. So you don't have to be an expert in investing to get started.
I feel like that was such a light bulb moment with all of this. I think the power of storytelling and relationship building and all of that have been just, you've hit home with so many things today. I think, again, you are so incredibly powerful. I just feel like you are just getting started, even though it's already been 8 years. And I'm just honored to be able to watch your journey from the sidelines, and just thank you so much for coming today. I hope everybody gained a lot of value from this episode. If you guys have any questions at all. Where can they find you?
All right. So you can find me on Instagram at Cris Gordon PR, and you can find me at chrisgordon.com or cbcommunications.com, and feel free to reach out. I am an open book. You can always slide into my DMs and ask me anything. And for anyone who's a mom, a business owner, or working or climbing the corporate ladder, I also have my Baby Mama brand and my Mommy Marvelous book that just came out. So we're always talking about how women can do anything that they want and anything that they put their minds to. So always happy to have those conversations too.
I love it. Thank you so much,
Thank
Cris. This
you.
is great.
Thank you so much for having me.